and welcome to another episode of What the Tech. I'm Rolando Rosas, and on today's episode, we're bringing you entrepreneurship, my 20 years of experience, and what I would have done differently if I had to do it over again, and things I wish I'd have known back then. It's easy to say that now, but you know what? I'm dishing out with the advice and the pointers so that if you're either starting your journey or somewhere further along and want to know what to do to improve your game on your entrepreneurship road, I'm here to help guide you. And today, we normally have, I throw it over here, and where's that Dave Kelly? Is he here with us today? What the heck? Mr. Dave Kelly, where are you in that empty chair? I guess he's not there today. Dave's on vacation today, so he's got a well-deserved day off, and we've got his empty chair. Empty chair. Do you have anything to say in for Dave? Is he on a warm beach somewhere? Oh, you won't say? Oh, he is on a warm beach. All right. Well, you just have to keep that chair nice and warm for him so when he gets back. All right, empty chair. Thanks for chiming in. Oh, terrific. Well, today we've got, maybe I look a little low. Let me see if I can raise myself a little bit up. Okay. So on today's episode, what we've got is the journey. The journey is a long and hard journey. And before we get to the journey, we've got some trivia that we want to go ahead and share with you. Ori, do we have the trivia question queued up? Okay, perfect. And I don't even know what this one is. This is a surprise. Two truths and a lie. Two of these statements are true. The other is false. Which is it? 1, 60% of people who start small businesses are in the age range of 40 to 60. 30% of entrepreneurs come from extremely rich or poor backgrounds. Interesting. And number 3, the average number of businesses started by an entrepreneur is 2. It could be any one of these. Any one of these. All right. We'll have to stick around and find out later. See which one is actually true and which one is not. All right, Ori. Well, thanks for that. And normally I would introduce a guest about this time, but I'm going solo today since Dave is on vacation and going to be with you for the hour. And before we get into the heart and the meat of everything that I've got for you today, I just want to remind you to like and subscribe as we get going through this, because we will release additional nuggets throughout the week. And the only way to get in on that is if you're notified on those new releases. So go ahead, hit all the bells, hit the whistles, all that good stuff so that you get in just like everybody else that's subscribed. All right. Wonderful. So like I said earlier today, we're going to talk about my journey. But before we get into that journey, I want to play some video. Ori, do we have that video ready? Okay, we've got some video there. And so let me tee it up on what you're going to see. You're going to see a little bit of Mark Zuckerberg, their big day when they went onto Wall Street. Actually, they were not on Wall Street, but the stock went on the NASDAQ and it was launching their IPO. And it was a big day. I mean, who wouldn't want to be standing at that podium? Their probably their life's work, their journey, all the ups and downs, and there you are on that podium, that nice, wonderful day, trying to put bottle up all your emotions as you know you're going public, and you know that maybe there's a big pot of rainbow at the end of that when you're going public, and that's kind of the goal for a lot of entrepreneurs is to someday stand on a podium like that or ring the bell for the stock exchange. And, that's usually the end for a lot of folks, but the beginning for some others on a much, much harder path when you talk about being public. But it's a goal for a lot of people to get there and stand up, sign your name if you're doing the NASDAQ, or ring the bell or the gavel if you're on Wall Street. But I want to start there because For so many of us that are entrepreneurs, you want to be successful. You want to be able to, if you're getting to towards the end of the journey, cash out. But for a lot of folks that are starting out on the journey, it can be very difficult, tough. And I'm not gonna paint you a rosy picture here. I'm gonna just speak the truth to you today. Being an entrepreneur is hard. It is difficult if you want to be successful. You don't have to do anything if you don't want to be successful. But the journey is tough and is it can be very, very, very trying, very challenging, and you have to be ready for that. A lot of folks don't say that. What we just saw with Mark Zuckerberg is not typical in terms of results, and we're going to talk about some statistics that actually point to how difficult it can be. So buckle up as we go through some of these points on things I wish I was told when I was starting. I think we're going to share a little bit of the early years, right? Or is that where we're starting? All right. Yeah, let's go ahead and start. So let me. So in the early years, when I started Global Tech back in 2002. This is some of the things that were around, and what you're looking at there is from left to right is the early days of Global Tech, where I started this company right in my kitchen. And what you're seeing is some of the early stuff, like the computer you see on the top right hand corner. That was an actual computer from college that I used, and that's my workstation there to get things going. That's how it started. My own college computer, dusted it off, grabbed the printer, stuck it on a shelf somewhere. As you can see, the phone is the old analog phone. My goodness, how times have changed. And eventually I got a laptop, which is what you're also seeing in that second image from the left, to be able to move around, go to clients' offices, and be a little bit more mobile. And I think what you're looking at there is a Palm Pilot. Yeah, Palm Pilot. Those are dead pretty much. And so off to the races I started. Grabbed the old computer, grabbed the business cards, and started hitting the streets, literally going to meetings and on the road and whatnot, trying to get the company going. And as anybody knows, if you're further along in the journey, you know that getting started is a difficult process. And for some, just getting started can be a very frightening thing. And thanks, Ori, for putting that up. That was our very first website. Something that I knew early on was that it'll be hard to succeed as a solopreneur, really, when I got started, if I couldn't talk to the masses. And if you are somebody that is in that journey, and you haven't yet launched your website, or maybe your website isn't where it should be, this is the way to communicate to the masses. The internet, especially in the last 2 years now that we've seen, and everybody's experienced this pandemic, everything is moving online. Everything that can be online should be online. And if you're a business person, you really need to make sure that your business is online and that you have an online presence. And we're going to get to a little bit more about the online presence and how that's really worked out for us. Uh, but let's go and start with another thing. Let's start with one of the first things I wish I knew when starting off the business. One of the first things that somebody should have said to me, you're going to be working harder than anybody at your company. And you'll be thinking, well, you have employees, right? Yes, you have employees, and sometimes you start by yourself. You may not even start with employees, but if you do have employees, I heard recently from a guy that I respect, Gary Vaynerchuk, talk about how it is almost, it's not practical to think that employees are going to work as hard as you do, or like you do, or have the same interests that you do. So expecting that you may work harder or longer than your employees is very real. It's a real thing. It's a very possible thing. And even further along, once you develop your organization and you have many more employees, depending on the type of work that you're doing in the industry, you may find yourself that you're actually doing more work than your employees, because you want to reward your employees. You want them to feel like they're welcome and that the organization isn't really coming down hard on them about maybe them working harder than you. Every culture is different. In our company, I feel that if my folks can take days off and breaks, the whole organization is better. So it's okay if I'm the one working a little longer and harder. They don't have to work the same hours that I do. And that's, we can get into talk about remote working, but I think the backbone of the company, which are the employees and the assets of the company, they should be able to be refreshed. They should be able to get breaks. They should be able to be healthy. And that may mean that you, as the founder or the CEO, or the chief executive, you may need to work a little bit longer than them. Now, work smarter. We'll get to how we've been doing that and achieving that here at Global Tech. But I want to just show you something on a person who who right now today he's kind of upended the world, so to speak, because of that philosophy. And early on, I'm talking about Jeff Bezos. He was the one driving a lot of the trucks through the warehouse. And a lot of people don't know that. He drove some of the trucks himself inside his warehouse. And so he set a kind of a new model of how to go about working. And a lot of people won't agree with the way he's worked, the way he's done things, but it's hard to argue with success. And we got some clips there here of early Jeff Bezos, who really doesn't look a lot like he did. And this was, I think, 1997. But one of the things that he's pointing out here in this video is that one of the reasons they went into he went into the online space was that in the book category, there are more SKUs than any other category out there. And so one thing you could capture from Jeff at this point in time is that he's a very smart guy. He knows that there's an opportunity there that's not being exploited. And he was very candid about how they launched Amazon and why he launched it, using books as the starting point. I don't know if he knew he was going to get into other industries at that point. I mean, he doesn't mention it in this video, but he does mention that books was the category where there's just a lot more opportunity, because there's many more SKUs to go after than let's say, electronics, even, where there's a lot of SKUs, but books was the way to go. So in the early days, Jeff Bezos was doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And getting started, you will have obstacles like, where should you go? I'll tell you this. I backed into the entrepreneurship bug thing. The company that I was working for at the time, this was the early 2000s, they had a lot of layoffs. So we were just coming off the .com and the telecom bust, both imploding in early 2000s. And my department got reduced to one person. And I backed into entrepreneurship this way. So I had a box of their stuff laying around. And for months, I couldn't get a job. It was quite difficult. There was a lot of telecom people running around trying to get jobs, and nothing was happening, no matter how many resumes I'd put out there. So I just looked at this box that's sitting in the closet full of devices. And I said, you know what? Instead of me recycling them or just giving them away, why don't I just try to sell these? So I reached out to somebody that I knew prior to me leaving the organization. And it turned out, she said, yeah, I have a need for some. And lo and behold, that was the start of it. She said she needed some. And so I thought, well, what if I could do this? I mean, I never run a company myself, never started a company. I've been a professional only, 5, 6, 7 years almost. So I had an idea of what business was like, but I had no clue on how to run a company. But once I realized that there was a customer that needed this stuff and that I could provide that to that customer, I figured I could do that, because I was kind of doing that, but in a different role where I was selling this for the company that I had been working for. So that got me thinking about, well, let me get started. Now, this is where I would say, if you are somebody that's at the beginning of this or thinking of jumping into entrepreneurship, I would say proceed slowly with caution. If you're working somewhere and you got a good thing going, but maybe have some other ideas, you want to leave, you want to go, you want to start your own, dip your toe in the water first, because jumping into the water all at once can be a lot for a lot of people and overwhelming. So if you have the opportunity to maybe start working on your idea uh, a couple of hours a week, where maybe you're out there talking to other folks, seeing if it's a side hustle at first, do it. It's a lot. There's a lot. There's nothing wrong with having job security while you're getting your idea off the ground. That's something that, at the time I did not know about that. But if I were doing it again, things I wish I knew. Go ahead, stay in your full time job as long as you can, as you're developing your side hustle. And at the point where your side hustle can at least pay your bills, is that time where you may be at that point where, if I do this full time, I can generate more revenue. And that's when you'll will make a much better transition, because when you get started, you're going to have bills that you got to pay that are the company bills, and you want to have some cash flow available to you so that you can get things going. Because at first, there's a lot of initial investments that you're going to make that are going to set you up for success down the road. So my first thing, somebody should have said, yeah, if you can stay at that job as long as you can, get your side hustle going to where it now, instead of being a side hustle, it is the full-time thing that you're doing. All right. So that's pointer number one. Number two, when you're an entrepreneur, uh, you will be spending time away from your family, and you will be traveling to go see customers. You'll be traveling to go to road shows. You'll be traveling to conferences as you're trying to get your name out there, as you're trying to develop that business, you're trying to get that clientele list going. It is not an easy thing to take a chance, and a lot of bigger companies and medium-sized companies don't like taking chances with smaller entities. They just don't. Uh, Government agencies, as much as they say they want to do business with small business, generally don't do a ton of business with small, but it does get done. It does get done. I'd been to every possible small business thingy that almost every agency had to offer, and got very little to show for it. So I got very frustrated with that, and I would tell you, something they don't tell you. It's not on the screen there, but a lot of these small businesses, and I'll say I haven't been to some of these functions in years. Fortunately for us, I haven't had the need to go there, but here what you're seeing, actually CES show, one of the larger conferences, I have found. Here's a bonus. Hey, Ori, can we do a pro tip as you're doing go ahead and throw up a pro tip. Pro tip. I like conferences for this simple reason. A lot of your customers or partners that you're doing business with are going to be there. Now, getting to some of these clients and partners on a day by day basis can be difficult, especially if they're spread out through the country. If you do business nationally, now if you're doing business locally, it's a different flavor for you. But if you're doing business nationally, like we are, having all your partners and some potential customers being all in one place in one city for several days at a time is huge. Uh, and so for me, an event like CES is not just about the different booths that are there. It's about the people, and in the people that are there. For me in our industry, a lot of them are there, so I can meet with them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so on. And you know what? They're all in one place. I don't have to jump in a bunch of planes. And most of them are there too. So it's a very efficient way to use your time, a very productive way to take advantage of that. And then, unlike 20 years ago, we didn't have social media to stay connected. These are great jump off points. And then, you use your social media tools to try to stay connected with those people, those partners, those potential, those clients and whatnot. So conferences are good usage of your time if you know what you're doing. Now, in the early days for me, conferences were just, I did not know my way around it. I hadn't really attended very many conferences, so it was very overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff going on. So when I go to these conferences now, I already have appointments lined up. I already have my agenda set for several days that I'm there to make sure that I can not only make the best use of my time, but make sure that those folks that I'm trying to connect with, it's on their calendar. It's not just, hey, I'm going to show up. No, we'll have lunch on Tuesday at 1 p.m. or we're gonna have dinner at 7:30 at such and such place. And when you do that, you're setting yourself up for success because now instead of just randomly going to these conferences or trade shows, you're going to be even more effective. And it took me years to realize that. I would just show up in the early days, just show up, and I know I would meet people that we were doing business with, but it didn't dawn on me to like, wow, I can just set appointments ahead of time to make sure that the vice president of this department is there and we have a meeting, and I'm sharing that with you so you can avoid those type of mistakes if you're going to trade shows. Now we're back out of the pandemic, so all those trade shows haven't come back online, but when they do, you want to try to implement that. Let me know if you're watching this during the playback and you're not watching this live. Let me know after you've gone to one of those conferences and you've done some of this, some of the planning, some of the pre-planning, I would call it, where you put folks in your agenda or your calendar. Let me know how you do it. I'd love to know. Share it with our audience. So I invite you to drop us some comments on that if you're already doing that. I'd love to share it with more folks. All right. So trade shows. The other thing is we're talking about when you are away from your loved ones, when you're traveling, one of the things that you want to do is try to develop a pipeline. And it's really hard when you first get started to develop a pipeline because you may not know where to start when you're trying to develop a pipeline. I think one of the ways that I've looked at it is this: where's the low-hanging fruit? And if you can go after that low-hanging fruit, you will start having success early. Now, for me, when I started the company in Florida back in 2002. And the way business gets done in Florida is different than, let's say, in New York or in California. And what I quickly found is that for the way I like to do business, for the clients that I was trying to go after, I found that different regions in the country were better suited to what we were doing and how to align yourself. And was a difficult decision then. What do we do? Should we stay in Florida? So we kept a little satellite office there and focused on the different parts of the different regions within the country. Because at the time when I was getting going, for, let's say, call centers, for example, there's tons of call centers in Florida. There's a lot of call centers, a lot of big ones that are in Florida. But guess what? There's a lot of competition in Florida for those exact call centers. So those call centers have a lot of attention. They have a lot of reps from every industry calling on them. Hey, blah, 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 can you do this? Are you looking for that? Blah, blah. You know what? So go to where your competition is not at. And that's kind of what we focused in on early was, all right, a lot of folks weren't at that time. Again, internet was not the play. It was, if you look at that video from Jeff Bezos, you'll see that was the early days. So we decided to go ahead and launch a website to capture national eyeballs, really. And back then, there wasn't really a lot of e-commerce activity. And being a solopreneur, you can only hit so many people. You can only talk to so many people, but having an online presence changed that. And that was the beginning of us really looking at this e-commerce, which in the early days, we wanted to be able to shop and buy. And actually what we started was with a website where you had all the products there, and then you called us and let us know which product you wanted to buy. And then we did the transaction over the phone. That's all changed today because now you don't even need to talk to anybody. Just hit a button and it goes out the door. Transaction comes in through the system, and out goes the product through FedEx, UPS, or Postal Service. So find out where your competition is not. And for us, it was an online presence where we realized there aren't a lot of folks talking to people nationally about our particular product. Now that's changed. We've got a lot of competitors. In terms, Amazon themselves sell some of the type of products that we sell. Many other companies sell, but you still have to keep trying to find where is the best niche that you can be. And that would be, here's another pro tip, or give me another pro tip. Pro tip number 2, niches make riches. If you're able to find a niche that's underserved and there are fewer or no competitors, you are going to make money. You will be better served. Uh, you will be welcomed with more open arms from the customer standpoint, rather than beating yourself up against a wall. Like I was saying earlier, when we started the company in the early days in Florida, hitting those big call centers that are located there, everybody was talking to them. Everybody was there, giving them huge discounts. Now, that sometimes is the enemy of a small business or a starting business or a solopreneur, is that you've got to give deep discounts, especially to these big, larger firms, if you don't have the margins. And devices only have so much margin available to them, that a small business may not be able to afford all the inventory. The small business may not have the backing of, maybe if you're working with a manufacturer, to give you some concessions so that you can in turn offer additional discounts to those big customers. Let me also say this. Big customers are great, because you know what? It'd be nice if I could just show you all the logos of all the big customers, that we have. But what is a lot of times is not said with those big uh, trophy customers is that those trophy customers, and when it comes to devices, it's different than when we're talking services. But in the device world, in the hardware world, those big customers want big concessions. They want big discounts. So the margins can be thin, or much thinner than you want it to be, than if you focused on smaller or medium customers where there isn't a lot of action, where there isn't a lot of competition. So early on, we tried to focus on these customers, the medium-sized and small business customers, and the way to get to them was through the web, because they didn't have a rep calling them up and say, "Hey, um, hey, Dave, I've got I've got another new wireless headset that you want to talk about. Oh no, you want to talk webcams? Oh yeah, I'll come over. I'll see you in a couple of days." No, that just doesn't happen when you're a smaller or a medium business a lot of the time, because a lot of reps, and it's taken years to understand this, a lot of the reps, for most of these device companies, they want the big deals, and they have a clock that they're working with. So they're going to focus on the bigger fish. Why not you focus on the smaller fish? You know why? They're easier to turn over. Boom, 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 boom. Here's another one. If you are working with smaller and medium business, somebody told me this early on, which really solidified what we were doing in terms of our approach, was that if you have, let's say you have 1,000 customers, and all of them are small customers. If one of those 1,000 customers happens to go out of business or defaults on a payment, you're going to be fine. You won't like it, but your business won't go under. I'll give you an example of that. In this industry, when I started, uh, there was a pretty large entity and a distributor that went under. And in part because in the early 2000s, some of these bigger accounts like WorldCom and Enron, and there were some big failures. If they go bankrupt, you're left holding the bag, right? If they go bankrupt and don't pay the bills and they owe you $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, as a small or medium business, that hurts. That really hurts. So these big clients can be great for being on the trophy, horrible if they don't pay, horrible if they're slow payers, which is another thing. Another thing of being in business this long, you find that it's much better for customers to in the device world now. Again, the devices is a bit different than services. In the device, if you can get that transaction going, boom, 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 because you end up spending less time per customer to make the transaction happen than you do with some of the larger customers, which can take months, if not years. And don't want to name this particular client that we've worked with for years. This is very large, well known, on the East Coast. I'll just say that much. And we didn't know that they were slow payers. We just knew we wanted to be in that account. and we had a good fit in terms of what we could provide them. And it's a very large multinational organization. Well, we got the business. We won the first bid that that they had out there that we could bid on. Well, once we got the project going, guess what happened? The first project to get paid, it took almost 8 months, and it just sucked. I'll just put it that way. It sucked not to get paid in 8 months. You don't want that. Uh, and we thought that would get better. We said, okay, we'll what can we do? We talked to their people, their financial department, and it turned out that that's just the way they ran their business or organization. That's how they ran their organization, and they had many other companies that they owed money on a regular basis and were just they didn't think they were late. That's just kind of the way they rolled. If it takes us 5 months to get around to you, it took 5 months, and I was just blown away by that. We had the good fortune down the line. We did a couple other projects with this organization, and right around when we got to like a third or fourth project, we were like, no, things are not improving. This is really not working well for us, because we were still in the process of growing, and as a small organization, every dollar counts. Every single dollar coming in the door counts. And so we, by just the universe somehow, were able to get out of it without it being a big problem, where we had this tell them, hey, we don't really like what's going on. It just so happened a lot of factors came into place right around that time when we just decided, it's probably not working out well for us to not get paid months and months and months down the line. Another business took over the project manager turned over, and it just so happened that another company took that project over, or the one of the last ones that we were going to bid on with them, and it just worked out well. We learned a big lesson. Better to have companies that pay on time, if you're putting credit terms out, than really big trophy companies that can suck the life out of you because they owe you money. And that is the hardest thing for a small business entrepreneur to understand early on. Should I go after the trophy? Should I focus on these little small timers? And sometimes you just weigh the pros and cons, and every industry is a little bit different. I just know for us, being in the inventory game, those can really drain your bank accounts. So niches make riches. Thank you, Ori. Focus on, if you have the ability to get small, quick hits, low-hanging fruit, do it. Small businesses are the way to go. Medium businesses are the way to go. Enterprise accounts are great. Those are great trophy accounts. Pick them wisely. Negotiate if you can. If you have the ability to negotiate terms, you totally can. When they send you a draft letter saying, oh, here's what we got, here's our terms and conditions, and this is how we pay, you know what? And this was a little bit off script, but feel free to take that pen and cross those things out. Tell them to send you the Word document version of the payment agreement, or if you have obviously NDAs are pretty standard, but I'm not talking about NDAs. I'm talking about actual terms on getting paid. Some organizations will just pay you quicker if you give them a 1% discount if they pay within 10 days or 15 days. You could set the table. They may say no, but if you don't ask, you'll never know, because some companies, the larger ones, would love to take an extra 1 or 2 percentage point discounts on the price in return for paying you earlier. So if you've got a big deal you're working on, keep that in mind, because that is one way to get your money much quicker. You don't want to be out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months or more when you have these large projects, unless you got the cash, right? If you got the cash, it's an investment at that point. But most companies don't have that luxury. All right, let's move on. Another thing that I would sum up in here in this category, as you're growing, you need to have systems in place. You can back it up one. Yes, it was still number 2. I wanted to talk about this point. Systems in place. What do I mean by that? When you are, whether you're a solopreneur or you're further down the road, The way the process of the business gets done for us, it was being online and having that take off and flourish for us. Then we realized, oh, we get business online. What do we do then? Orders coming in every day. Oh, what do we do then? People calling us every day. At that time, faxing us. Faxing is pretty much almost dead, unless you're in one of the legal or healthcare industries, um, or sometimes education as well. We needed to have people in place. We needed to have phone systems in place. We needed to have a way to distribute orders, way to process those orders so that those customers calling in could get their orders turned around like that. And once we realized that, we started slowly implementing productivity enhancers like automation. If you are not yet automating, you're missing the boat. And this is the best way to get a leg up on your competition. It does require some investment, and not all automation is the same. If you are in the business of doing orders and selling products, there's many things you can automate, many things in that process. And we've done a lot of them over the years, so that as your business starts growing and profits start accumulating, if you automate, you can repurpose the people you have. And we've done that here at our organization. The same people that are there, we haven't had to let anybody go because of automation. We actually take somebody that has been working in spreadsheets and this and that and the other. They're not doing that as much, and they're doing other functions for us, so that we're getting better return on the people that we have in the organization, that they're using more of their creativity and their brain power. And that's what people want. Nobody wants to just sit in a cubicle, copying and pasting all day. You don't want to do that. I don't like doing that. Every turn that I can and find a way to get out of that, I do. There's some of that that's unavoidable, but there are many ways to cut down on the amount of email responses, spreadsheet work, so that you're really focused in on the analysis. So having systems in place, and if you have some questions about that, reach out to me, or somebody on my staff will also be able to answer. Send us a comment about that, about systems. Maybe we do another episode and we talk about the systems for success or something like that. But you need a system. You need a way that allows you to focus on the business rather than the business running you. And having systems in place allows you to do that. All right, let's move on to number 3, Ori. You will experience lots of stress. This is something somebody should have told me from the get. Why do I say that? Rolando, I could hear some people saying, Rolando, well, you could do yoga. Yes, you can do all of those things. And I do some of those things. But the business world can be tough. It can chew you up. It can spit you out. Competitors move in and bigger competitors will try to come in and try to squash you. You have companies that will try to make it difficult for you. Depending on some industries, you may be buying product from either offshore or through different suppliers, and conditions change. People rotate in and out of those organizations. New policies come in, and we've seen that over the 20 years that I've been, a particular manager comes in, or a management team comes into place at an organization that you had a really good relationship, and now it's all effed up. All right. That happens. Recessions. We had a recession in 2008, and I think we've had slowdowns in the last 20 years. We've had several slowdowns, and we've had several different business cycles. And every time there's a downturn, real estate bubble bursting, and other things like that, it is stressful. It is hard. You may have to lay people off to keep the company going. You may have to cut back on activities. You may have to reallocate cash in order to get things going. You may have clients in turn, when there are downturns, clients that are paying much slower or not paying at all. All of these things add stress to your life because you are the decision maker. You're the one, you're the founder, you're the CEO, you're the chief, you're the top dog. You know what? The buck comes right to your front step and right to your desk. And you're having to confront those ugly situations. So know that you're going to get that. You know, COVID was for us. It turned out to be, from a business standpoint, it turned out to be pretty good for us because people needed more webcams, people needed more headsets and headphones, and all the rest of those tools for the office as well as working from home. But not every company fared well during COVID, and not every company fared well during the travel and leisure, for example. Not every company fared well when the real estate market crashed a couple years ago, because then it affected so many more people that weren't even in real estate. So you're going to have all these unexpected twists and turns, and you may want to be prepared for that. The other thing, if you are selling like we're selling devices and hardware. This could also apply to service-based companies. If you look at companies, the business cycle changes. Like companies like BlackBerry, you know, they had a lock on the market. They had a great device. I don't know if you had one of these, but I did. I look at the rim. They were researching that blue one. I had that one, exact one with the AT&T wireless on there, and BlackBerry. Boy, everybody that worked at any company. That's 2002. Yeah, that's probably why I had it. Anybody in that Palm Pilot, I had one of those too. That later came on after Palm. Anybody that had a BlackBerry, or I should say, anybody that worked at a business of any sort, had a BlackBerry, right? So if you're too young to know what a BlackBerry is, then you're too young. But anybody that's of my age and maybe a lot older realizes or remembers the BlackBerry, and they improved. They kept making, better devices. But guess what happened to BlackBerry? Another company on the horizon came in that'd been out there hungry, wanting that smartphone market. Apple. Steve Jobs said, look at that. I am going to go make these devices obsolete, because they are focused on one area. And what they don't understand, it's about the customer experience. And Steve Jobs, people laughed at him when he was like, I'm going to make this iPhone, right? I remember that. Like, what? People in the business community using the BlackBerry said, never, we'll never have an iPhone in this company. And you know what? That tune changed as soon as people started getting iPhones in their hands. And then the companies had to change their policy. And a new word came into the lexicon, BYOD, bring your own device. And BlackBerry for years was able to keep a hard grip on the enterprise and government, because inside of those companies was something that Apple did not have at that time. It was called BES, a BlackBerry Enterprise Server, which basically managed the security of those devices. And so BlackBerry, or RIM, Research in Motion, was able to keep a lock on the corporate environment. But guess what? That BYOD, where CEOs wanted the iPhone, that forced the hand to be changed. That then all of a sudden, companies that could provide that type of security that you needed for the iPhone and other devices came into place. An agnostic software tool that allowed you to have your own server that managed security across all devices on your network. That was the nail in the coffin, because RIM thought nobody could do this like we can. Well, that's what competition does. Sometimes it'll eat you alive if you don't continue to innovate. And I say that because in the hardware space, and I would imagine also in the service space, if you don't continue to innovate, unless you have monopoly, which are very hard to break up and hard to defeat big incumbents, it's going to be a hard road. But you have to keep an eye on your competition. You have to stay sharp, not just an eye, but you have to be aware of what's happening in the terms of trends. You cannot stop innovating. If you stop innovating, it will lead you to failure. Now, my organization, we for many years, we didn't produce any devices, but the way we were selling, the way we were targeting customers, that we adapted as things evolved. There was no MailChimp back in the day, right? Everybody pretty much, worked off the same playbook. I got a list of customers, a book, and I'm going to call these customers these Fortune 500 customers. Guess what? That doesn't work as well today. You have to change your tactics. So, You have to evolve with what's happening. Otherwise, you'll end up in the graveyard. Just look at I just got a couple other examples. Blockbusters. Do we have something on Blockbuster, Ori? So, who did not love Blockbusters? I love Blockbuster. It's great. Get your video games, while you're there. Loved it. Look at that, 84,000 employees, not a small organization. Look at that, 65 million customers. Look at that. They were making money. They had a store on every corner. Who didn't have, I had a Blockbuster card, right? But guess what? Something I just learned recently. Netflix, which now you probably have a Netflix account. And look, yeah, they were in debt. They were really having some problems there. But Netflix and streaming changed the game. And I've read something recently where Netflix had approached Blockbuster to purchase them for about $50 million in and around, this was, I want to say it was in the early 2000s, or maybe I got my dates wrong. But I know that Blockbusters did approach them to buy for about $50 million. Let me look at my notes here. Yeah, so yeah, 2000. Thank you, Ori. Thanks for that. And so who would have thought Blockbusters and a lot of these stores would be basically defunct now? But Blockbusters could have taken that to the next level and said, you know what? Yeah, we're going to offer streaming services as well. There was Redbox, which was then the next kind of iteration. And I think Redbox may still be around, where they put little kiosks. So they didn't even have to pay as much real estate to get the devices, or in this case, the content to in people's hands. And that changed when you didn't have to go somewhere. And Redbox had a lot of their kiosks at a lot of convenience stores, which is where there's a lot of traffic. So they didn't have to pay the real estate for a store like Blockbusters did. Again, changing times. You have to innovate. And streaming came on. Netflix came on the scene. It took them a while to get going, to be profitable. Now the rest is history. Netflix has taken over. Blockbusters is gone as a company. One less example, because I think it's worth driving home. Kodak, humongous company, humongous, right? They'd been around for years. Cameras. If you're as old as I am, you remember taking your roll of film and going over to Walgreens or CVS, and that was the way you got your pictures. You know what? Kodak could have taken over the digital space as well. They poo-pooed it, and guess what? Very few places now, because of the invention of the smartphone and cameras into the smartphone, basically took over that space. Again, innovate. You have to stay ahead of the curve. You have to be adaptable. That's the word that I'm looking for. Adaptable, because nothing is fixed and etched in stone. Things change. Being flexible is good. And I've talked about being flexible on other podcasts about remote work and how the culture is changing. And I would just want to add here that for what we're going through now, post-COVID, and attitudes that have changed about work, I could draw some parallels there, in that staying and working in the same way pre-COVID and saying that's the way we got to do it after COVID is a path to like a Kodak or Blockbusters. Is that going to happen exactly? I mean, are people going to go under? No. But one thing's for sure, something like 40% of people are saying right now in the most recent surveys will quit. And we already have seen that in the data from the Labor Department for April and May. We had the highest number of people quit their job voluntarily and there's another one. Thanks for putting that one up. And in another survey done on behalf of Forbes, people that were polled at these very high tech, very well-respected companies like Apple and Amazon, would they take $30,000 to go back into the office or work from home? $30,000 to go back and work in the office. And 64% said no. That's a really high number. And that's the other survey that was done for Bloomberg, where it said 39% rather quit than go back to working in office. So 39% want to stay working remote. So if you are an organization, you want to stay relevant, you want to stay current, you want to keep employees happy, it's already happening. It's not when it will happen, but a work type of revolution. We had a guest on, Steve Cadigan, say it's a career migration that's starting to happen. Pay attention to that, because if you want to stay current, relevant, you want to know what your employees are saying. You're going to have some that do want to go back to the office. Absolutely. So a flexible policy where people can go back and work to the office if they need to, as well as letting those work remotely, is probably the way to go. But everything is it's changing very fast. Who knows? By the time you see this, if you're watching the playback 3 or 4 or 5 months later, who knows what'll happen, what's next? But being flexible and adaptable is a key to success, especially when things change. All right, let's go to number 4, Ori. This is one where once you start getting your business off the ground, the hardest thing is to bring in those first employees. I know it was for me. Very scary. I'm like, are they going to work? Do I have to monitor them? Do I have to watch them? Ah! Having employees can be. Where is Dave? Ori, where's Dave? Dave, where are you, Dave? You're supposed to be there. See, that's what I'm talking about. He was supposed to be on the podcast today with me, and he's out vacationing somewhere in the sunshine. Who knows? Where'd he go? Do we know where he went, Ori? Some beach. Well, well, Dave, well-deserved vacation. Enjoy the time off. But yeah, you know what? Employees can cause frustrations as an owner. Now, Dave's not causing me any frustration because he's taking well-deserved vacation, but you can have employees, once they come on, the hardest thing, I tell people this all the time, the hardest thing is not the technology. So we sell technology products and services. The technology itself is not the hardest thing. The hardest element is the human element. Why? Because you and I may not agree on a lot. You and I may have a different perspective. You and I may think, you think remote work is the way to go. I may say, hell no. Everybody, go back into the office, whether you like it or not. Or make a statement like David Solomon at Goldman says, hey, you know what? If you can go to a restaurant in New York City, by God, you can bring your butt into the office on Monday. Oh, David, I think you may have to change that tune soon. We'll have to see. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm wrong. But employees can be a really big problem if they don't believe what you believe in terms of the vision. I'm not talking about politics as much, but the vision. You need to have a shared vision. And those employees, contractors and others need to share that same vision. If you don't, then eventually you have some big breakups like Steve Jobs and Wozniak. These guys started something amazing, but your visions may not always be aligned. And Steve Jobs, so much so that the board ended up letting go of Steve Jobs, and eventually he came back to Apple to revive it and make it the great company that it was and what it is right now. At Jack Dorsey at Twitter. Twitter is a household name. He was shown the door, out, goodbye. So as you move along, and we started with the journey of Mark Zuckerberg, now he's been able to hold on to his company for a long time. He hasn't faced what these two guys faced, who are household names. But this is the kind of thing that can happen. And not that it should stop you from jumping into the entrepreneurial pool, but as you get into that level when you're talking about public companies and you're traded on the stock market, these things happen. Does it happen to all of them? No. But at some point they may decide you're irrelevant, show you the door. And sometimes they bring you back because they find out that was a big mistake. So not always having employees that are aligned with your culture or aligned with your vision can be a source of frustration. All right. So let's go to the last point here of the journey. All right. The journey is a long, winding road with many twists and turns, especially for somebody, I've been doing this for 20 years. one of the biggest things I would say, you want to be where the competition is not. And I think I jumped the gun here when I said that earlier, but you don't want to play where the hard action is at, where it's so difficult. Why? Depending on the industry you're in, you may find there's opportunity elsewhere, whether it's a vertical or whether it's size and it's the size of the companies, whether it's the particular regions. I would say that there are regions of the country where certain products and services fit more because there's either more people there, or the opposite is true. Like rural broadband, say that 3 times fast. Rural broadband. Now, not a lot of folks are selling in that space, in those areas because they're further apart, and there's away from the metro centers. But according to what's the action that's going to come down the line with these infrastructure spending in the next couple of years, that may be. I'm just throwing out an example. Rural is the way to go here, as more roads and bridges and infrastructure is needed in a lot of the parts of the country where they're underserved. So playing where the competition is not is one of those things I would definitely say you definitely want to do. The other thing is your vision may change and adapt and evolve. And like I was saying earlier, being flexible and adaptable is something you want to have as an entrepreneur. You want to be curious, constantly being curious. Why? Because if things evolve, they may, where you're thinking today, and this is the need today, it's not going to be the need tomorrow of the customers and where they're going. And you need to know, like I think Wayne Gretzky say, he was so good because he can see where the hockey puck was going, and he's one of the best. So if you're into NHL hockey, you know that Wayne Gretzky was one of the best players that lived and played the sport. And his thing was, he said he went to where the puck was going. I would say in business, you've got to look at it that way too. Go to where the puck is going in your industry. If you don't know where it's going, surround yourself with people that are thought leaders or others that you know on LinkedIn, Facebook groups. I would say these are really underutilized tools. I've discovered a lot on both of these things for folks like myself that are in our industry and working in the e-commerce space. A lot of things that have saved me tons of money and time. As a company, if you could save money and time, that's just money that's going right back in your pocket. I mean, you may not see it, but that's money that you would have spent to maybe hire a consultant, hire an expert to come in and give you that advice. And one of the things I wanted to say was one of the ventures that we're now launching is called Circuit Loops. And in that venture, we are engaging with clients that want to have an Amazon-like experience when it comes to business internet. What we've discovered, we do a pretty good job on the transaction of things like devices where customers want a device. Hey, I want a headset. You know what? Here we go. I want this. I want this headphone. I want this headset. I want to get it fast. We do a pretty good job of that. We work on Amazon and other platforms, and whether you're buying on Amazon or you're buying somewhere else, we're able to get that to you. And what we found over the years is that customers kept asking us, hey, can you work with us on the service side, on our internet stuff or our network stuff? We'd love to get our devices and our services from you. You guys have done a good job. Well, we used to just, you can go on the internet and do the blah, blah. But what we really didn't understand was that customers were saying, and this is where the customer is right to a point, all right? They're not always right, but they're right to a point. And what I mean by that is that they may be telling you something, but you have to dig a little bit deeper. And after years of hearing similar types of just type of comments from customers that wanted us to give them phone services along with the devices that they could use with those phones and headsets and whatnot, was that the experience they were having was not the same when they went over to, call a service provider. I'm not going to say any names, but the service provider, whether it's a telco or otherwise. they weren't getting that same level of experience, the experience that they were having in terms of making that transaction flow and then go from start to end. So for those of you that are looking for a better internet experience, you want to maybe reevaluate what your internet connection is like. And we have several other services. This is our first launch of it. We're gonna have we'll have a big press release here soon about it. So if you're watching this live, you're getting a little bit of an inside scoop. There's some more surprises that are coming down the line here in the next couple of weeks with this. So stay tuned as we roll out the information on Circuit Loops. But if you're basically a business and you want to get a better business internet experience, we'll be glad to help you on the Circuit Loop side. All right, so let's roll over to the trivia question. Ori? All right, 2 truths and a lie. 2 are true, 1's a lie. Let's find out which one it is. 60% of people who start a small business are in the age range of 40 to 60 years old. Don't know about that. 30% of entrepreneurs came from extremely rich or poor backgrounds. Or number 3, the average number of businesses started by entrepreneur is 2. Let me see. 2 truths and a lie. I'm going to say the lie is number 3. Ori. Oh! Goodness gracious, Ori, you got me. You got me. So the lie is the 30% of entrepreneurs come from extremely rich or poor backgrounds. The reality is that's only less than 1%. So it is true. It's true that the average number of businesses by an entrepreneur is 2, and that applies to me. I thought maybe that number was different, maybe more than that. And it is true that 60% of people who start small businesses are in the age range of 40 to 60. And I would suspect that's simply because around that age range, you're going to be more financially secure on average than if you were, coming right out of college or right out of high school. Now, are there whiz kids? Of course there's whiz kids that start businesses. And you know what? It's never been easier to start a business today. We didn't have Twitter. We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have TikTok or LinkedIn, MailChimp, all the YouTube. None of that was around really in the early in 2000, 2001. Some of these things have come on much, much later. So it's much easier to get your message. Certainly a lot of these platforms are saturated, but within those platforms, there's opportunities. And I challenge you to go find those opportunities on the platforms. And that's where our journey has been taking us, which is what you're looking at right now. We didn't get into this podcast thing till 6 or 7 months ago. So if you're watching this much, much later, as of August, I think we've been doing this for 7 months, 8 months now. I invite you to ride the journey with us. We're going to hopefully get better at doing this, bring you better content. Let us know what you think. I read a lot of these comments and suggestions. Like, subscribe, hit all the bells and whistles, because you know what? We love engaging with our audience. We love having folks provide us feedback. Hey, I want to hear about this. I want to hear about that. When are you going to talk about this? Or a guest? Let us know. I like hearing and seeing those comments. Positive and negative. It doesn't matter. I'm a big boy. I can handle the negative too. So bring those our way too. So if you've been hanging on all the way to the end, I want to thank you. And I want to let you know that there's some other helpful videos. Where am I pointing, Ori? Over here, right? I'm going to be, along with my buddy Dave, we're going to be in these videos right over here. Remote work, work-life balance, all this other good stuff. So watch these other videos and I will see you inside of these episodes. All right? See you soon.